Hey everyone. All right. So gonna go ahead. I'm making another video. Sorry, still haven't figured out the BS going on with the internet. Still trying to get it worked out. I wanted to go ahead and talk about a subject that I somewhat covered on a stream a while ago. I don't even know how long ago it was. But I talked about how the new social currency is victim points, victim currency, basically. Basically, the more victimized you are, the more valuable you are. And I've actually been doing some thinking on that recently, and it still stands as true, but it's kind of a high level currency. It's not the end all be all. What it's actually gotten down to, and it's kind of sad that it's gotten to this point, is that it's not so much the victim currency, it's the whole humanity currency. Uh, Being viewed as human is now kind of a currency that's being used. Because the thing is, it doesn't matter how much victimhood you have if you're not seen as human. So, I just want to go ahead and kind of talk on this for a bit. Now, here's the thing. I view people as human. Doesn't matter how much I disagree with them, how much I'm irritated with them, how angry I am with them. Uh, it doesn't matter. I view us as human. We're all people. Sad to say, I'm probably in the minority on that. There's a lot of people out there that will try to dehumanize people to make it so that they feel justified in not listening to them. And I think that that's absolutely horrible. People should never have that mentality about them, but it's a thing that's happening now. And just as an example, with the whole whenever you saw the thing with Sargon when he was sitting there and arguing, it became a meme. The "you're a fucking white male." At that point, it's what's being said there is because of what you are not a person, you are not a human, you are valueless, and you have no right to speak, and there's no reason to listen to you. Basically, sit down, shut up, and let the humans talk. And some people will say, oh, well, that's conflating it. No, actually, it isn't. Um, because we've heard this come from the left before. We've also heard it come from the right in the extremes, but it's much more prominent in the left. And you can see it in their hypocrisy. Basically, with the left, for you to be viewed as a valuable human, if you're white and male, you have to be completely subservient. So you're still viewed as subhuman. Best case scenario in the left. Whereas on the right, you're viewed as a human. Just period, end of story. Because whenever something bad has happened to the left, where someone on the left was killed, like let's take for example Charlottesville, the right was pissed about it. They're all like, "There's no need for the loss of human life. That's completely unacceptable." Now take a look at the Vegas shootings. You had people from the left sitting there and saying, well, it was a country music festival, so it was probably a bunch of conservatives, so at least there's that. And no, I'm not joking with that. There were several mainstream leftists that actually came out and said that. There were some people that were saying, good, those conservatives deserved it, and da-da-da-da-da. I mean, it put the left's, I'm going to say bigotry and also their sheer hatred on full display. And then you've got stuff like, after the Florida shooting, that just recently happened, the Florida school shooting. You've got the left sitting there and saying anyone who's pro-Second Amendment or is a member of the NRA is a child murderer. Well, in Western culture, child murderers are viewed as subhuman at best. Most people just view them as monsters, not as humans. So, what does this mean? This means that these people are saying that if you believe in the Second Amendment, you believe in the right for citizens to own their own guns, to be able to protect themselves, law-abiding citizens, they're saying that you are a monster, that you are less than human, that you need to be dealt with. And a lot of people sit there and say, oh, you shouldn't view any groups as a monolith. I feel fairly safe viewing the left as a monolith at this point. And here is my reason why I feel comfortable viewing them as a monolith. I don't view any other groups as a monolith. But the left, I do. Any cult, I view as a monolith because of the way that they're set up. Because the thing is, cults are built as a monolith. You have to have a very rigid way of thinking. You cannot be open to other ideas. You can't even listen to anyone else. You can't even stop and ponder the thought. Sargon a while back made a video showing how the left and the leftist agenda and all that shit, how he showed the parallels between that and a cult. He made one video that was tongue-in-cheek and then one that was very, very serious. And I can't deny it. I tried, because I was all like, no, I'm not going to do that because that's the thing. I don't like it when they do that to the right, and so I'm not going to do that to the left. But I looked into what he was saying, and I stopped and I thought about it. I also applied it to the right. The thing is, the right, by applying that same standard, is not a cult. The right is actually very diverse. Funny thing is, the right is more open to diversity than the left is. And here's my reason for saying this. With the left, if you're white, you're under lock and key. If you're male, you're under lock and key. You're the first one to be thrown under the bus. And then you've got the progressive stack. I'm sure that all of you already know. But getting back to the original thought, the left is trying to dehumanize anyone and everyone that is not part of their monolith, that that doesn't think the same way, that isn't a part of their cult. You see that with the whole it's okay to punch a Nazi thing. No, it's not. Those Nazis are still human. And the thing is, you're going out there and you're just calling people Nazis to give yourself the internal moral okay to commit acts of violence against someone that you don't like. This doesn't surprise me, given the fact that the KKK actually came from the Democratic side. That the South was Democrat during the Civil War. None of this is surprising to me anymore. I find it fascinating, however, that they're trying to say that they're the humans and that somehow everyone else isn't. And then they deny it whenever people say that they're authoritarian or that they are violent or that they only they only see value in people that agree with them, and that they are perfectly fine with people who don't agree with them being armed, raped, killed, so on and so forth. They deny all that, except for the fact that there's proof of this. You've seen leftists, and I'm talking about prominent leftists. I'm not talking about your random chuckle fuck off the street. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about some little egg account on Twitter mouthing off and being a troll. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about verified journos. I'm talking about group leaders within the left. I'm talking about people who are way out there in the public spotlight. That the left sits there and says, yes, this person speaks for us. And you'll see a bunch of leftists there during their speeches and that sort of thing, cheering and that sort of thing, in large numbers. When they will sit there and say something like, oh, the election didn't go the way that we wanted, so it would be awesome to see the White House get blown up. Or them sit there and say, oh, we should go ahead and kick everyone out of the country that has a certain color of skin. Or if if we call them a Nazi, they should be beaten daily. You know, that sort of shit. What do you hear from the so-called right? Which actually, a lot of the people that are really most vocal aren't on the right. They're actually centrists. The right actually hasn't really been all that vocal. Sad to say. Right now, it's a fight between the left and the centrists. Between the left and people like me. Am I slightly right-leaning? Yes. But doesn't mean that I don't have some liberal views still. I view politics the same way I view religion. I don't think any side or any specific group has it 100% right. I go with what makes sense. And I recommend that other people adopt that way of thinking. Because it gets rid of that tribalistic aspect to the conversation. And if you're thinking tribally, you're not going to be able to come to the best solution. You're not even going to get close to getting people at least close to agreeing on shit. I mean, people are always going to disagree on something. I mean, at least with the big stuff, we need to get to the point of an understanding with each other. You don't have to necessarily agree with someone, but at least try to figure out where they're coming from. The right constantly invites people from the left to come in to debate, because not only do those people want to hear what this person has to say, but also at the same time, they want to give this person enough rope to where they'll hang themselves. Because it's very difficult for the left in debates, and that's the reason why you see a bunch of these leftists sitting there and saying, "Oh, challenge me to a debate, da 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 da," you know, don't just talk about me. And then when they get challenged to a debate, "Oh, well, there's no point in talking to you. I won't be in the same room as you. You disgust me, blah blah blah." You know, every fucking excuse in the book. Or if they agree to it, they're all like, "Well, it has to be for the debate, the moderator has to be a leftist. The moderator has to be this. The moderator has to be that. It has to be in this venue. You have to pay for everything." And it's all like, really? You want this other person to go in with absolutely nothing on their side, and then you're going to sit there, and if you do somehow manage to win through bullying tactics, which I've seen happen in a couple of debates, where they literally would not let the person from the right speak, where the person from the right got 5 minutes out of 4 hours of talk time. And then they sit there and try to say, "Well, you lost. You weren't able to convince anyone. You lost in a fair debate." That's not a fair debate, bitch. There's a reason why there's a format for debate. One side gets 15 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever is agreed upon, depending on how long you expect this debate to go and how detailed you want it to be, how nuanced you want it to be. One person gets their time to talk, the other person gets their time to go ahead and rebuttal. Then they get a chance to talk, and back and forth, back and forth. Both people get the equal amount of time to speak. Unless both parties agree that one person should get a little bit of extra time, maybe to expand on something. And I've seen this happen in debates, where one of the people was all like, "Actually, can they have a little bit of extra time so that way they can explain this a little bit better? Let me ask this one question and then let them respond." I've seen this happen in debates. But that's with people who are actually trying to come to an understanding, who are trying to convince the person that they're speaking with as well as the audience. But right now, what we're doing is what I call gladiatorial debating. The whole, "Are you not entertained?" That shit. Quite frankly, I hate that. I mean, there's always some level of showmanship in debate. Always is. Always has been. Always will be. Because you can have all the facts in the world, but if you have absolutely no charisma whatsoever, if you're not able to connect with that audience, it's going to be really hard to convince that audience of anything. Especially if you're going up against someone who does have charisma. There's a reason why you don't see a whole lot of like lifelong hardcore scientists coming out and doing direct debates. They're usually trotted out there to give facts, or their studies are brought out to give facts, but they typically aren't the ones who do the debate. Because scientists, I mean, some of them do have charisma. That it does happen. But think of the stereotypical scientist. You know? usually they're not going to deal exceedingly well in a debate. Either they're going to be talking above the subject matter, or they're going to dumb it down so much that people feel insulted because the people are feeling like they're treating them like children, which isn't good. Or they're going to lack the vernacular to effectively communicate. And it's really easy to dehumanize that type of person. Someone who's not able to communicate as effectively. And I think that it's interesting that if you actually take a look in our country, as far as people who are struggling in the public school system, people who are struggling to get education, or struggling to make ends meet, there's one group that really does stand out. That's actually white males. And yet, that's the group that the left is going after, trying to dehumanize. I find that fascinating. Now, am I saying that white males have it the worst? Not necessarily. But white males definitely don't have a cakewalk of it like the left is saying. And so it's frustrating to people. Especially once they actually go out and do the research themselves. More and more people are starting to. That's the reason why the left is starting to hemorrhage members, as I've heard it said. Why more and more people are going to the right, which they're not. They're just going with the side that actually values them as an individual and is okay with them having their own thoughts and opinions, that's willing to engage with them on a human-to-human basis. The left thinks that by it dehumanizing people, or attempting to dehumanize people, the left thinks that it's somehow gaining some power. It's bankrupting itself. Because the more important currency at this point is the currency of humanity. The right is the one offering. They're operating in that. Everyone gets that base amount just from existing on the right. Whereas on the left, almost no one will sit there and recognize that you are a person, that you are an individual. They don't want to recognize individuality. The only time they want to recognize individuality is if someone on the right does something good, so that way that can't be contributed to the right. Or if someone on the left does something exceedingly abhorrent, so that way it can't be attributed to the left. That's the only times that I've ever seen the left be all like, oh, well, that's an individual, they're not a monolith. Or if it's someone from one of their little protected groups doing something stereotypically bad for the group. Like a black guy going in and knocking over a 7-Eleven, or an Asian person making a 7-lane change over the course of 50 fucking yards while going down the freeway with the wrong blinker on. Just the stereotypical shit. That's when they're all like, oh no, that's an individual. You can't. It's all like. The worst I've seen with the right is them sit there and look at stereotypes and go, stereotypes exist for a reason. And they're not sitting there and saying stereotypes for this group exist for a reason, but stereotypes for that. I don't see that hypocrisy very often on the right. And when I do hear hypocrisy like that on the right, it's usually from people who gladly say, yeah, I'm a neo-Nazi. It's from people like that. It's from people who absolutely despise others who are not exactly like themselves. I've always said that the far right, the alt right, is just basically the right's left. It's basically what it is. They're the SJWs with a right-leaning bent. That's what they are. But I see a lot of people on the right that look at that with absolute disgust. They're all like, no, you are not associated with me. We might believe in a couple of the same things, like maybe economically, maybe one or two policies, but it has nothing to do with all that shit. A lot of the people on the right, here's what they're interested in. They're interested in protecting the country from foreign threats. They're interested in protecting the country from domestic threats. They're interested in protecting people's rights, everyone's rights equally. They're interested in trying to protect what little bit of validity our voting system has left. They're interested in protecting the country economically. They're interested in giving value back to being a citizen. Because right now, being a U.S. citizen means almost nothing. The left sits there and thinks that being a citizen of the U.S. is some major thing. It's really not anymore. It means almost nothing. In fact, if you're a born citizen, and there's no question of it, in many ways, it's actually a detriment. There are a lot of ways where being an illegal immigrant here in the U.S. has a lot of benefits. There's a lot of free money that goes toward these people. Gets thrown at them for them being illegal. Let that sink in. Their schooling gets paid for. They don't have to pay for their driver's license. They can get a driver's license. They get pushed to the front of the line for food stamps, for cash aid, loans, to start up a business. Yes, illegals will start up a business. There's a bunch of states that sit there and say, yeah, go ahead and vote, when these people have no right to vote. Citizens have the right to vote. And I find it absolutely hilarious that the people that are sitting there and saying that these illegal immigrants that hop the border should be allowed to vote, but then sit there and freak out whenever they think about Russia meddling in our affairs. It's all like, you're perfectly fine with foreign interests fucking with our election. But it's because you control those interests, because if they don't vote the right way, then they're going to be deported. Whereas with Russia's going with its own interest, which more than likely is going to be against yours. I see. I find it interesting that whenever you look at what the left says about the right, they themselves are doing on a daily basis. And then when you point that out, they sit there and say that you're straw manning. No, actually, I'm not. I'm stating what's going on. Here's the interesting thing. A lot of the things that the left says that they hate, I actually hate. I actually despise those things. I hate identity politics. I hate specific groups getting special treatment because of the condition of their birth, while other groups are drugged down into the mud because of the conditions of their birth. I hate that shit. I despise it. Passionately. So, what's the answer to it? How about this? Get rid of anything that brings up gender, and any laws or policies that bring up gender. Any laws or policies that bring up race. Any laws or policies that bring up age. Any laws or policies, anything like that. Then go ahead and retake a look at the situation. I think we can all agree that kids need some extra level of protection, from pedophiles, from banks, or stuff like big tobacco and big pharma companies. They need extra protections from them because they're not able to make the decisions for themselves. Once they become legal age, those protections go away, period, end of story. Once they reach the age where they can make their own decisions. But I believe that we should also have it where that age should be for everything. So the same age when you're old enough to join the military, you're now old enough to vote, you're old enough to drink, you're old enough to smoke, you're old enough to drive, you're old enough to do this, that, and the other. No separation of, oh, well, you can buy this gun at this age and this gun at that age. No, get rid of that shit. This is one of the biggest problems that people have with the U.S. legal system. Is that it's overly complicated for no reason, other than they're trying to create loopholes for people who can afford slick shit lawyers, so that they can utilize those loopholes. But the common folk can't. Quite frankly, half the laws in America, and I'm being conservative with that estimate, about half the laws in America could probably be taken off the books and you would not notice a difference in day-to-day life. There are a lot of laws that aren't enacted unless they need something, and it's a desperate Hail Mary. It's kind of like working for Walmart or some other big conglomerate. They have a whole bunch of rules there, and a lot of those rules conflict with each other. To follow one rule, you have to break another. Why is that? So that way they can fire you at any time and get away with it. If you say the wrong thing or whatever, they can fire you for something else. Why these companies don't utilize that every single time, I don't know. I really don't. I think it comes down to stupid management. All I know is if I owned a company and I had that tool at my disposal and I really wanted to get rid of someone, yeah, I'd get rid of them in that way. I would never sit there and fire them for anything that could even be questioned. And I would put it down as the reason. Oh, you broke this part of the agreement. You broke that part of the agreement. You broke this part of the agreement. And I would do this for two reasons. One, because It would help me out. Even if they came in and said, oh, well, that's an unfair thing because this, that, or the other. This policy's not okay. If a judge comes in and says that, now there's precedent set. So, like, let's say a company like Google or YouTube, with their policy, well, even though you're agreeing to the shit, if it's unfair, then it can be overturned by a judge. And all of a sudden, the floodgates open. And if the judge sits there and says, nah, it's that thing, I'm still safe. I don't see myself losing out on this in any way, shape, or form. What's going to happen is, at that point, either there's going to be precedent set that's going to allow for the betterment of society, or I'm just going to stay in the same spot. Either way. So, the thing is, when it comes down to dehumanizing someone, though, at no point should anyone be okay with that. If you see someone dehumanizing someone else, it doesn't matter if it's someone on the right dehumanizing someone on the left, or someone on the left dehumanizing someone on the right, or just two people in the center that are just clashing heads and trying to dehumanize each other, trying to use that bullshit tactic. Call them out on it. The more this shit gets called out and the more people dogpile on these people, the more often it happens and the more it happens with whoever is doing it and no favoritism is there, the less we're going to see it happen in the future. Because then people are going to look at that and look at the history of it and go, yeah, maybe doing that shit ain't okay. Maybe stop questioning someone's humanity unless they've done something absolutely abhorrent, like, cutting off a kid's head and parading it around in the town square or something like that. Something that's truly worthy of being called a monster. Now, I do want to bring up one thing. Sargon actually made a video somewhat recently where he was critiquing another YouTuber's video, and the YouTuber's leftist, male feminist, that sort of shit. And he was talking about the chick from Laurier University and her video where she sat there and said, yeah, I'm not part of the left anymore, and here's why. And he was just sitting there and strawmanning, putting words in her mouth, saying she did shit that she didn't fucking do. Then sitting there doing the guilt by association thing, making excuses for piss poor shit. Making a minor concession here or there, trying to appear to be neutral, when he wasn't neutral in any way, shape, or form, when he wasn't honest about the situation in any shape or form. Trying to make it seem like she had always been alt-right when she's not even alt-right now. Hell, I still think she's a fucking leftist. But it's just she was driven out from the left because she dared to challenge the status quo. Apparently she missed the memo in her indoctrination of, if you ever question anything that anyone on the left ever fucking says at any point for any fucking reason, then you're alt-right and you always had a right-leaning agenda, and everything that you did for the left was just trying to be a Trojan horse. And then he's sitting there and saying, the left doesn't do that, while he's doing it. And I mean, literally, if you don't believe me, go and watch Sargon's video. People have been wanting me to do reply videos in the reply format like I did with that one psycho bitch. And quite frankly, I don't like doing it because, for one, it frustrates the hell out of me. It does. I mean, if I'm watching through a video the first time, I'm frustrated enough. If you want me to watch through it 5 or 6 times to get my point straight while I'm going through and doing all that, a lot of people don't realize how much work goes into it. At that point, that is not healthy for me. It really isn't healthy for me. I already have high blood pressure. I don't need to be driving it up even farther by having to listen to the same stupidity over and over and over again. There's a reason why I memorized the left's arguments. And why I have them categorized. It's getting to the point where I can call the general direction that they're going to go in. Whatever fucking argument they're going to use against something. Whatever bullshit excuse they're going to use against something. All you have to do is give me the source material that they're going to be responding to, and I could go ahead and pass myself off as a leftist. I easily could pass myself off as a leftist because they are a monolith. Whereas it's very difficult for someone to actually pass themselves off as someone who's right-leaning, because there's a lot of diversity of thought. There's a lot of diversity of opinion in the right. It's funny because when people say the intolerant left, they're not joking. It's not just a meme. It's not just a stereotype. And if you have any doubt about that, go ahead and show me a single situation where the right busted in to a speech from the left or something like that, pulled fire alarms, charged the stage, anything like that. Go ahead and show me. Because if you can show me one, I'll show you 10 of the left doing that. And probably being a lot more violent about it. That's my biggest problem here. It is. There's so much blatant hypocrisy at this point. And I don't get it. I've never understood how people can think that this is okay. Never. I just want to go back to the days where if two people disagree, they go ahead, they argue it out, and it's done. Where people listen to both sides of the argument and then can come to a conclusion at that point. Where it didn't matter what your skin color, where it didn't matter what gender you were. I mean, yeah, there were some subjects like, like let's say if the argument's about menstruation. All right, at that point, guys sit there and kind of go, yeah, no. Like, they might make the base comments of, yeah, that means no sex. Not even all guys agree on that. But there's not much that guys have had to say about that other than whenever that happens, I wish I had a log cabin in the middle of the woods so I can get away from it. That's about it. But I want to go ahead and bring this up. What about erectile dysfunction? Oh no, women have been chiming in on that one for a long time. They have a nice fucking chuckle at that. But then when it comes to menopause, oh, guys aren't allowed to joke about that. You know, erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, having a small dick, whatever, whatnot. Think about the female equivalent. If guys bring that up and joke about that shit, they're a fucking filthy pig, they're a sexist and all that sort of thing. But if a woman's making jokes at a guy's expense, oh, it's perfectly fine. She's just being strong and independent, and she's just telling it like it is. Really? Same thing with black comedians. Or any minority comedian. Sitting there and ripping on white people. But if a white comedian comes out and says something against a minority group, specific, very, very much so black, but any minority group, but black is definitely the no. Then all of a sudden, their specials get pulled, or they have to pay some fine, or the network will sit there and say, yeah, we'll never have them there, or the venue will sit there and say they're not welcome back, whatever, whatnot. The double standards need to stop. And that's where a lot of people are having the problem. And I'm talking to people on the left at this point. I'm telling you the problems that you have. Because the optics on this are absolutely fucking horrible. They are. No one likes a hypocrite. No one. So either everyone can talk about everything, or no one can talk about anything. Can't have these special little standards for every little thing. That's called micromanaging. Guess what micromanaging is a part of? It's part of authoritarianism. It's part of puritanism. Let people live their own lives. Let the societies equal themselves out. Because people will naturally group with like-minded people. And you just look absolutely weak when you go in to a speech being given by someone that you disagree with, and instead of waiting until a Q&A, going up and asking hard-hitting questions that they're going to have a hard time answering if they are in the wrong. But instead of doing that, you go ahead and you pull fire alarms, and you start yelling and screeching, marching in, rushing the stage, attacking people, using a fucking bullhorn to make noise, acting like petulant children. You look weak as fuck. And people look at you and go, yeah, these people don't have a good argument, or else they wouldn't have to be acting like that. And I've listened to your arguments. You don't have any good arguments. To be perfectly honest, leftists, you are the most sexist, racist, bigoted people on the planet. I can see where people make the comparison between you and Nazis, between you and the Vatican during the Crusades. Where people sit there and say, yeah, can see why they defend Islam so hardcore. We can see that. Authoritarian groups have to stick together. Puritan groups have to stick together. You're quick to throw a Nobel Prize-winning scientist under the bus and drive him out of his place of employment, and do your damnedest to make sure that he will never be employed again for sitting there and saying he doesn't like to work with women in labs because they have a tendency to cry. And because they have a tendency to get emotionally attached to shit, which guess what is true, it's part of the female condition. Men have that tendency too, but we have to learn to suppress it. Women don't. In fact, if a woman suppresses it, she's looked weird. She's looked at in a weird way. She's looked at as a freak. Same thing with guys that are overly emotional, fucking emos. You're more than happy to drive that guy out of work. Or the scientists from the moon, not moon landing, but the landing on that comet or meteor, I forget. No, it's a comet because a meteor is what drops to Earth. But on the comet landing, you guys were so quick to attack him in the greatest moment of his life because he wore the wrong fucking shirt? No, that's you looking to destroy his achievement. That's you looking to discredit. You support groups that sit there and say that to decolonize science, we need to sit there and deny the people who actually came up with the shit, and then let these other people who already have access to this information sit there and go, yeah, look what I just discovered today. You're wanting to revise history. But yet you don't say anything about when Muslims sit there and say that white Western women are only good for them to use, rape, and then throw out like trash. You don't get up in arms about that. You're more than happy to get up in arms when a guy sexually assaults a woman, but you don't get up in arms or you actively defend when a woman sexually molests a child or multiple children when in a position of power over them as a teacher or whatever. Whereas if a male teacher has sex with a young female student, you call for his head on a pike. If a man cheats on a woman, he's a pig. He's some sort of sexual deviant. But you're sitting there and saying that a man should be perfectly fine with being denied sex from his partner and having to watch her give sex to another man. And that he should be okay with it. And that he's sexist if he doesn't. And then when a man sits there and says, oh, well, if that's the case, then she should be okay with watching me fuck another woman. Oh, no, you're a sexist piece of shit. That's just sick. Really? And you wonder why so many people are saying, you know what, I'm not with the left anymore. Really? You're confused at this. Why? Who would want to sign up for something like that? And I know a lot of women out there that definitely don't want a cuckold for a husband. That want a man that's actually going to stand up for himself. Because if he's not willing to stand up for himself, he sure as hell isn't willing to stand up for her. If he's not strong enough to stand up for himself, he's not strong enough to stand up for her. There are a lot of women that realize that men and women actually do need each other to a certain degree. Nature kind of built us that way. Like I said, I'm saddened that MGTOW's a thing. I'm saddened that I'm a MGTOW. I wish that this didn't have to be. Here's the secret. MGTOWs didn't lose interest in women. You just priced yourselves out of the market. A lot of us are still interested. And don't sit there and say, oh, well, it was, it was conservatives that passed the shit. Who was pressuring them? Feminists. Who are feminists associated with? The left. So don't even. Name one thing that's ended up turning out well that the left has brought to the table. Name one fucking thing. I don't know. I haven't seen anything good that the left has brought to the table. What I've seen is, from the left, is limitation after limitation after limitation after limitation after limitation. And then, on top of that, sitting there and taking rights away from one group and giving them to another. Taking stuff away from one group and giving it to another. With the group that's receiving the stuff having done nothing to have earned it, other than exist. And what's your reasoning for it? What, because bad things happened to the ancestors of this group? Guess what? Bad things have happened to white people. Bad things happen to white people nowadays. Bad things happen to men. Bad things happen to boys. The problem that we have with this whole situation, other than the fact that bad things happen to people in general, is that you actually condone some of it. You applaud some of it. You advocate for some of it. And then you try to blame us when the bad things happen to the targets that you don't want the bad things to happen to. So, you tell me, why in the hell should anyone identify with the left? Why would anyone want to identify as part of that group? Why should we even give you the time of day anymore? You don't believe in treating other people as actual people. You believe in treating people as commodities. Whatever's more useful to you, you put it up on the fucking pedestal. Anything that you can't see a use for, leave it down in the dirt. And keep it down there. Doesn't matter what an individual person does. It matters what group they come from. You know who else had that mentality? The Nazis. You know who else had that mentality? The KKK. You know who else had that mentality? Black Lives Matter. By any means necessary. Antifa. The left. All the groups that comprise the left. All the groups that are associated with the left. All of them have that common thread. And they'll sit there and they'll try to deny it. But then you go ahead and you look at videos where They either don't know that they're being recorded, or they just don't give a fuck. Because they're so enraged by whatever situation's going on. And they show their true colors. We didn't come up with this as some way to lie about you. We're just stating what we're seeing. But I know that that's all going to fall on deaf ears. Because zealots don't listen to reason. They don't listen to truth. They don't listen to logic. They do what makes them feel good. And it just really sucks that the zealots in the left, what makes them feel good is tearing other people down, is dehumanizing people to make themselves feel more human, to make themselves feel superior. What makes them feel good is making other people just as miserable as they are. What makes them feel good is bringing other people down to their level. What irritates them beyond all reason is when people refuse to allow that to happen. I think it's interesting that we're starting to kind of see a cultural shift at this point. We're starting to see more and more big companies going, yeah, maybe listening to the left isn't a good idea. And as those companies say that, all of a sudden their stock prices go up. All of a sudden they start getting more business. They start becoming more profitable. All the groups that pander to the left, all of a sudden they lose a lot of business. Their stock prices go down. Management gets fired. Start surfacing that there's been some nefarious activity going on in this company for quite a while. Usually involving someone in a position of authority abusing said authority. And it's usually people that are like anti-Gamergate, anti-Second Amendment, anti-Trump, anti-border, anti-wall, anti-democracy, or even anti-America at that point. And I think that it's extremely funny that the group that did the hashtag Me Too, saying that people should be able to feel brave enough to come out and talk about and speak truth to power, that they shouldn't have to be afraid to come out and talk about their experiences. The very same group that sat there and started up that fucking train wreck, which was already rife because of the hashtag listen and believe bullshit that was pushed before. Yeah, that very same group is sitting there and trying to say that freedom of speech shouldn't be a thing. Well, here's the thing. If someone comes out and accuses you of sexual misconduct, you really don't think that that would be offensive to the person? I mean, you're so anti-offense. I can tell you right now, if someone came out and accused me of that, I would be offended by it. Especially because that's not part of my nature. I'm a fucked up individual, but that's one of the few levels where I'm not fucked up. So, I just want to know. You really think that this isn't going to be used against you? That once the evil right-wingers are gone, after you've thrown them into your gulags, after you've got them in the FEMA camps, after you've gassed them and burned them, really think it's going to stop there? Nope. Because then the real purity tests begin. At first, it'll be the white males that were allies. You'll find some excuse there to get rid of them. Then the white women. Then the Asians. And eventually, you're going to have nothing. You're going to easily get overran by another culture. Culture that isn't afraid to offend. And by that point, you will have bred in that victimhood culture into the very being of all existing people in your culture at that point. And so, these other cultures will be able to come in, not even fire off a single shot. All they'd have to do is come in and call you some bad names or say some things that you disagree with. They'd just be able to watch you scatter. Go running back to your safe space. Kill off the couple of you that are psychotically angry. And then they win. Because the rest of you will be paralyzed by your own weakness that you brought about all on your own. And I'm assuming at this point that the right just stays asleep. Because right now it is slumbering. You think that the alt-right is bad? If the actual right was to stand up and actually say something, stop being a silent majority and start being a vocal majority, well then, yeah. I don't think you'd last very long in the political spheres. The thing is, though, the right is tolerant. It's tolerant to a fault, unfortunately. And because they're fighting for freedom of speech, they will never want you to be silenced. They will stand next to you, protect your right to spew your hatred, to spew your bullshit, knowing full well that you will then stand with the enemy when the enemy comes for them. Or that you will stab them in the back to make it easier for the enemy to come for them. But that's because the right is actually principled. Whereas the left has no principles. It has hypocrisy. That's its foundation. But I would expect no less from anarcho-communist Marxists. And if anyone doesn't see a problem with that description, or see why it's funny that I'm able to legitimately apply that description to anyone in the world, well then, you need to go out and read some books. on the subject matter. But I'm just so sick and tired at this point of seeing people trying to dehumanize others because their argument is so fucking weak that they know that if this other person that they are dehumanizing even opens their mouth in a drunken stupor, make more sense. And instead of them taking a step back and looking, going, why am I getting my ass kicked every time someone engages me? Why is it I'm not able to convince anyone of anything without using the most underhanded, dirty, foul, and oppressive tactics that I possibly can? Instead of addressing the weakness of your own arguments, decide that the problem isn't with you, it's with everyone else. That anyone who disagrees with you in any way, shape, or form, or has even the slightest of difference of opinion, or even if they don't have a differing opinion, even if they're willing to listen to someone with a different opinion, that individual isn't human and doesn't deserve at least basic human respect. And then to try to cover that little fact up, because as soon as someone realizes that, well, then you definitely lost, regardless of what you said, decide to guise your little slice of bigotry as you fighting for human rights and basic human decency by dehumanizing anyone who disagrees with any premise of your cult-like behavior. The hypocrisy that I have seen from the left, the sheer hatred that I've seen from the left, sheer cowardice that I've seen from the left, well, I'm glad at no point did I ever associate with the left. I've always associated with either being right-leaning or centrist, or a right-leaning centrist. But I used to be a liberal. But you're forcing me to adopt more conservative views just so that way I am not associated with you. Now, I'm perfectly fine being associated with a little bit of crazy. I'm fine with that. I find myself in good company at that point. Because the people who've done great things for the world have all been a little bit crazy. All been a little bit eccentric. But here's a wake-up call to the left. You're not a little bit crazy. You are outright crazy. To the point of suicidal. I mean, the percentage of suicidal tendency kind of comes from the groups that you associate yourselves with that are already highly suicidal anyway. That tends to be a common factor. But if you're going to be suicidal, go ahead, go off on your own and be suicidal. Stop trying to take us down with you. If you've got a problem with the freedoms of this country, don't sit here and try to take away our freedoms. Go to a country that you think has just the right amount of freedom, that's doing it just the right way, or is at least closer to what you want done. Go to that country. Pull your shit there. I mean, Sweden's not open to you anymore because they're getting sick and tired of the whole immigrant thing and people coming in and fucking with their culture. So they're not open to you. I hear Russia's accepting people. I hear Germany's wanting more people in there. So go ahead. As long as you're not German. Because they don't want any Germans in Germany, funnily enough. I think they're just the right amount of suicidal for you. Not so much Russia. You go to Russia, you're going to get arrested right quick and in a hurry. But why don't you go to Germany? They'll welcome you with open arms. They're into suicide. And I find it interesting that Germany, even today, is still interested in genocide. Just instead of them going after the Jews, they've turned it on themselves. But you'll fit in perfectly over there. Left? Everyone from the left, you'll fit in perfectly over in Germany. I think Germany is the only place on the planet, unless you're going to move down to, like, Africa or something like that. I think Germany is the only place that hates white people even half as much as you. I mean, if you like, you know, the Islamic religion so much, why not move to a Muslim country? That's right. I'm asking you to practice what you preach. If Islam is a religion of peace, then why not move to an Islamic country under an Islamic regime? If it's an Islamic regime, then, I mean, it's got to be peaceful, right? I mean, if it's a religion of peace and their regime is based off of the tenets of Islam, why not? If you're such peace-loving people, why don't you move there? Go on, go. Stop you. Because we believe in freedom of choice. Unlike you. In fact, at that point, pretty sure the right would be more than willing to pay for your ticket. Each and every one of you. Thing is, I know that there won't be any takers. I know that there won't be any takers. Because you know, deep down, that the rights afforded in this country are the best rights in the world. That despite all of your protesting, all of your hatred, all of your lies, our country is still the most free country on the planet. that just tears you up. Authoritarians look at the U.S. as a living nightmare. People who believe in freedom look at the U.S. as a beacon of hope. People who believe in freedom support the U.S., want to see it stronger than ever, hoping that those freedoms will spread to other countries that don't have that freedom. Authoritarians wish to destroy it. They say actions speak louder than words. Guess what? The right has been fighting to keep the rights of everyone intact. The left has been fighting to do nothing more than take away those rights. Everything you have proposed has been taking away the rights of the people. And you have the audacity to say that centrists and the right are authoritarian? Go to an authoritarian country and live there for a few years, and then come back and tell me that to my face. If you aren't willing to do that, then sit down and shut the fuck up. And let the right go ahead and fix the problem that you have created for this country over the last 100 years.